A man with 3 failed marriages just started selling marriage advice online, and what he says next is so shocking the internet cannot stop watching. So hit subscribe right now, because this story gets crazier every single minute, and trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. The camera turns on, and for a few seconds, nothing feels unusual. A man adjusts his chair, smooths his hair, looks directly into the lens, and prepares to speak. But the moment viewers recognize who it is, the entire scene changes. Because the person sitting there is not a therapist, not a marriage counselor, not a best-selling relationship author, but Kody Brown, the same man whose family breakdown unfolded in front of millions across nearly 2 decades of reality television. And somehow, against all odds, he is now charging strangers money for advice about love, loyalty, and marriage. And the internet cannot decide whether to laugh, stare in disbelief, or keep watching out of pure fascination. Because this is the kind of twist no television writer would dare invent. A former reality television patriarch whose public image was built on the promise that plural marriage could succeed, now sitting alone in a quiet room, explaining how to keep one relationship alive. And the strangest part is that he speaks with complete confidence, as though he has finally uncovered a truth the rest of the world failed to understand. And that confidence immediately creates tension, because viewers remember everything. They remember the emotional confessions, the family arguments, the promises about unity, the long speeches about commitment, and the visible collapse that slowly unfolded year after year, until the once massive family structure narrowed down to a single surviving marriage. And now, after all of that history, he turns to the audience once again. Not to apologize, not to reflect quietly, not to disappear from public life, but to teach. And the moment he begins speaking, audiences lean closer, because there is something almost hypnotic about watching someone attempt to reclaim authority over a narrative that already escaped their control years ago. And this is where the story becomes impossible to ignore, because the deeper he goes, the more dramatic the contradiction becomes. He talks about devotion, sacrifice, loyalty, and putting your wife at the center of your universe. And if those words were spoken by someone with a completely different history, perhaps nobody would react so strongly. But spoken by him, every sentence carries the weight of everything viewers already witnessed for years. Every statement immediately collides with memories of relationships that no longer exist. And that collision creates suspense, because audiences
are not simply hearing advice. They are comparing it against an emotional archive stored in their minds. And the contrast between the past and present becomes almost cinematic. Because once upon a time, the entire message surrounding this family was that love could expand endlessly, that multiple marriages could coexist within one harmonious structure, and that the world simply misunderstood the beauty of plural commitment. Viewers were told repeatedly that this lifestyle represented abundance, connection, and spiritual fulfillment. But now, years later, the final message appears radically different. Because instead of celebrating a large, interconnected family, the focus has narrowed entirely onto one woman, one marriage, and one emotional center. And without directly admitting it, the shift quietly rewrites the entire philosophy that originally defined the family brand, which raises questions nobody can ignore. Because if this current relationship represents the truth, then what exactly were the previous decades? And perhaps more importantly, what happens when someone spends years building a public identity around a dream that eventually collapses under the weight of reality? Because that is the hidden emotional layer beneath all of this. This is not simply about online videos or marriage advice. This is about a man standing in the aftermath of a shattered identity, trying to construct a new version of himself.
Confession about loneliness, heartbreak, or disappointment still exists online, waiting to collide with the polished image he is presenting today. And no matter how carefully someone attempts to rewrite themselves, those old clips remain permanent, frozen in time, reminding audiences of what they already saw with their own eyes. And perhaps that is why this situation feels so strangely gripping, because it exposes the unique trap of reality television fame. Unlike actors who can separate themselves from fictional characters,
reality television personalities become attached forever to public versions of their real lives, meaning every future reinvention must compete directly against years of archived emotional evidence. And in this case, the emotional evidence is impossible to ignore, because viewers watch the family evolve from hopeful optimism into visible fragmentation over the course of 18 seasons. They saw emotional distance replace closeness. They saw communication break down. They saw wives slowly begin questioning whether the life they built still resembled the dream they once defended so passionately. And eventually, audiences witnessed something even more dramatic: the realization that the family itself no longer functioned as a family in the way it once claimed to. And now, after all of that public unraveling, the same central figure at the heart of the story appears online, selling certainty and confidence, as though he has finally solved the mystery that defeated him for years. And whether people view that as inspiring, tragic, ironic, or unintentionally hilarious, it creates the exact kind of emotional contradiction viewers cannot resist. Because human beings are naturally drawn toward unresolved stories, especially stories involving fame, identity, reinvention, and collapse. And in many ways, this feels less like a random internet controversy and more like the unofficial continuation of the reality show itself. Except now, the internet has replaced the television network. The audience has become the commentary panel, and every new clip functions like another episode in a saga people thought had already ended years ago. But the ending never truly arrived. There was no dramatic final conclusion, no clean resolution, no moment where everyone quietly walked away. Instead, the story simply faded from television screens, while continuing to live online through interviews, reactions, podcasts, social media posts, and now cameo videos, turning the entire internet into a permanent aftershow, where the audience continues analyzing every detail. And
as the videos continued spreading across the internet, the reactions became impossible to separate from the deeper emotional reality hiding underneath them. Because on the surface, people joked about the irony. They laughed at the idea of a man with such a public relationship history suddenly presenting himself as a source of wisdom. But beneath the memes and sarcastic comments, there was another reason audiences could not stop paying attention. And that reason was far more uncomfortable. Because what viewers were really witnessing was someone attempting to rebuild meaning from the ruins of a life that had collapsed in public. And the tension created by that effort turned every new clip into something strangely addictive to watch. Because each time Kody Brown sat in front of the camera, he was not simply recording a personalized message. He was participating in an ongoing battle over how his story would ultimately be remembered. And perhaps without even realizing it, he transformed those cameo videos into emotional performances where every sentence sounded less like casual advice and more like a defense of his entire legacy. Because the audience already knew the history. They remembered the promises about unity, the speeches about family values, the emotional insistence that plural marriage created abundance rather than division. And they also remembered how slowly, painfully, and publicly that vision unraveled over time, until only one relationship remained standing. And now, the same man once celebrated as the center of an unconventional family structure appeared online describing marriage in intensely singular terms, speaking about devotion, worship, sacrifice, and emotional surrender directed toward one woman alone. And that shift felt impossible to ignore, because without directly admitting failure, it quietly contradicted the very philosophy he spent years defending on television. And viewers sensed that contradiction immediately, which is why every new video generated so much discussion, because people were no longer simply reacting to what he said, they were reacting to the gap between the old narrative and the new one. And that gap contained years of emotional history, heartbreak, disappointment, and unresolved questions that audiences still carried with them long after the camera stopped officially filming. And perhaps that is what makes reality television so different from ordinary celebrity culture. Because audiences do not just consume these stories, they emotionally invest in them over time. They watch families grow, relationships evolve, conflicts intensify, and personalities change until eventually viewers feel almost like witnesses rather than spectators. And when those stories collapse publicly, the emotional aftermath. Every emotional conflict and every painful turning point that led to the current moment, and that public memory creates pressure unlike anything most people ever experience, because ordinary individuals can reinvent themselves quietly, away from scrutiny. But reality television personalities remain permanently attached to the versions of themselves audiences first encountered years earlier, meaning every future reinvention becomes a negotiation between who they are now and who the public believes they used to be. And nowhere is that tension more visible than in the current state of this story, because the man once associated with a massive, interconnected family now appears increasingly isolated, emotionally, symbolically, and narratively centered around one relationship, while speaking as though he has finally discovered the truth about love after years of visible relational chaos. And that transformation raises difficult questions audiences cannot stop asking. Because if this relationship truly represents emotional clarity, then what does that imply about the previous decades? Were they mistakes, learning experiences, failed experiments, or simply stepping stones toward the version of life he now defends so passionately? And perhaps even more unsettling is the possibility that he genuinely views the past not as equal chapters of his life, but as necessary paths leading toward the one relationship that remained, which would explain why the language surrounding his current marriage feels so elevated, almost spiritual at times. Because when someone invests that much emotional significance into one surviving relationship, it begins to resemble more than romance. It starts looking like proof that the sacrifices, heartbreak, and public criticism were ultimately justified by arriving at this final destination. And maybe that is why the videos feel emotionally intense in ways audiences struggle to fully explain. Because beneath the surface, there is a sense that he is not simply talking about marriage. He is talking about survival, identity, and validation all at once. And viewers instinctively pick up on that emotional undercurrent, which is why the audience reaction remains so layered. Some people watch ironically, some watch critically, some watch out of lingering attachment to the family story, and others watch because they recognize something deeply human inside the spectacle. The fear of becoming irrelevant after building an identity around something that no longer exists. Because beyond all the internet jokes and viral reactions, there was also a harsh reality about fame, especially reality television fame. For many people, the spotlight fades much faster than expected. The networks move on, public attention shifts,